Captain Jake Mitchell wiped sweat from his forehead as he stared at the enormous alien ship floating in space. It was easily 10 times bigger than their research station, the Aurora Dawn. 3 days ago, they had picked up a weak distress signal coming from somewhere deep in the Veil Nebula. Nobody had expected to find something this massive just drifting out there like a ghost ship. "Alright team, stay close and watch your step," Jake said into his helmet radio. The salvage crew moved slowly through the airlock and into the alien vessel. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed designed for creatures much taller than humans. Everything was covered in a strange blue dust that sparkled when their lights hit it. The ship felt dead. No power, no life support, no signs that anyone had been here for a very long time. But their sensors were picking up something interesting from the cargo bay area. Something that was still giving off energy readings even after all these years. "Captain, you need to see this," called out tech specialist Lisa Park from up ahead. Her voice sounded excited and nervous at the same time. Jake hurried forward with the rest of his team, their boots echoing in the empty halls. The cargo bay doors were massive, easily 30 feet tall. It took their plasma cutters several minutes to burn through the sealed entrance. When the doors finally opened, everyone stopped and stared. The room was huge, stretching out further than their lights could reach. But what caught their attention were the dozens of glowing objects arranged in perfect rows. "Are those eggs?" asked Security Chief David Cole, his hand moving automatically to his weapon. Dr. Amy Wells, their xenobiologist, pulled out her scanner and walked closer to examine them. Each egg was about the size of a football, made of what looked like crystal that glowed with a soft inner light. They sat in individual pods that were clearly some kind of advanced incubation system. Even after all this time, the pods were still working, keeping the eggs at the perfect temperature. "These readings are incredible," Dr. Wells whispered, her eyes wide as she studied her scanner. "The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. These eggs could be thousands of years old, maybe tens of thousands. I've never seen biological preservation technology this advanced." The team worked for hours, carefully documenting everything and preparing to transport some of the eggs back to their research station. The Aurora Dawn had the best xenobiology lab in this sector of space. If anyone could figure out what these creatures were, it would be Dr. Wells and her team. 2 days later, the first egg began to crack. Everyone on the research station crowded around the observation window to watch. The shell split slowly, piece by piece falling away like broken glass. What emerged made everyone gasp in amazement. The creature was about the size of a house cat, but it looked like something out of ancient mythology. Its scales were so black they seemed to absorb light, and its eyes glowed like molten gold. Small wings folded against its back, and when it opened its mouth to make a sound, they could see rows of needle-sharp teeth. "It's beautiful," breathed Dr. Wells. "Look at the bone structure, the muscle definition. This is clearly an apex predator species, but also highly intelligent. See how it's studying its environment? It's learning." The creature, which everyone was already calling a dragon hatchling, looked around the containment chamber with obvious intelligence. Its golden eyes seemed to take in every detail. Then it spotted the humans watching through the reinforced glass and tilted its head curiously. Commander Robert Hayes, head of station security, decided to enter the chamber for a closer look. He was experienced with dangerous alien life forms and took all the proper precautions. The moment he stepped inside, the hatchling's behavior changed completely. Its eyes narrowed, and it let out a sound like a miniature roar before lunging forward with surprising speed. Hayes barely had time to raise his arm before the creature's teeth sank into his protective suit. The bite went right through the advanced materials like they were paper. Within seconds, Hayes was on the ground, his body shaking uncontrollably as some kind of venom spread through his system. "Medical team to xenobiology lab immediately," Dr. Wells shouted over the intercom as they dragged Hayes out of the chamber. The dragon hatchling watched them go, its golden eyes now cold and hostile. Over the next few hours, 5 more eggs hatched. Each new dragon showed the same pattern of behavior. They were curious and intelligent until any person tried to get close. Then they became aggressive, even violent. Every attempt to interact with them ended the same way, with someone getting bitten and needing emergency medical treatment. The dragons were absolutely beautiful and clearly highly evolved creatures. But they seemed to hate humans with a passion that nobody could understand. Tom Bradley's back ached as he pushed his heavy cleaning cart down the long corridor of the Aurora Dawn research station. The wheels squeaked with each step, echoing through the empty hallways. It was almost 2 in the morning, and most of the station's crew was fast asleep. This was when Tom did his best work, cleaning up after everyone else while the world was quiet. He rubbed his tired eyes and checked his watch. 16 hours he'd been working today. First his regular day shift in the engine room, then picking up this extra night cleaning job. Every extra credit he earned went straight to the medical bills piling up back on Earth. His 8-year-old daughter Katie needed another surgery, and the insurance company kept finding reasons to delay payment. Tom pulled out his daughter's picture from his shirt pocket, like he did every night during his rounds. She was smiling in her hospital bed, missing 2 front teeth, holding up a drawing she'd made of him. "World's Best Dad" was written in purple crayon across the top. He kissed the photo gently before putting it back. Everything he did was for her. The xenobiology section was always busy, even in the middle of the night. Scientists worked around the clock when they discovered something new and exciting. Tom could hear voices arguing through the thick walls as he approached the lab area. Someone was clearly upset about something, but that wasn't unusual. Scientists loved to argue about their work. Through the reinforced glass windows, Tom could see Dr. Amy Wells waving her hands around as she talked with 2 other researchers. They all looked stressed and tired. Behind them, in a specially built containment chamber, were the dragon creatures that everyone on the station had been talking about for the past week. Tom had heard the stories from other crew members. Beautiful but deadly creatures that attacked anyone who got too close. 3 more security officers had been hospitalized just yesterday when they tried to move the dragons to a bigger enclosure. The medical team was running low on the special antidote they needed to treat the dragon's poisonous bites. As Tom entered the lab with his cleaning supplies, he could hear what Dr. Wells was saying. "We can't keep this up much longer. Every interaction ends in disaster. These creatures seem to hate us for some reason we don't understand. Maybe we should consider putting them in deep freeze until we can figure out a better approach." "But think about what we're learning," argued Dr. Peterson, the station's head researcher. "These are clearly intelligent beings. Look how they work together, how they communicate with each other. We can't give up now." Tom quietly emptied the trash cans around the room, staying out of their way. He'd learned long ago that scientists didn't really see maintenance workers. They were too focused on their important research to notice the people who kept their workplace clean and functioning. The dragons themselves were huddled together in the far corner of their containment unit. Tom had to admit they were beautiful creatures, even if they were dangerous. Their black scales seemed to shimmer under the bright lab lights, and their golden eyes were incredibly intelligent. Right now, they looked more scared than aggressive, pressed against each other like frightened animals. One of the smaller dragons kept looking toward the humans through the glass. Its head tilted back and forth as it watched them argue. Tom noticed that its eyes weren't filled with the anger that everyone talked about. Instead, the creature looked sad and lonely. "The problem is they won't let us get close enough to study them properly," Dr. Wells continued. "We can't run proper tests, we can't examine them for health issues, we can't even feed them without risking someone's life. They bite anyone who enters their space." Tom finished emptying the last trash can and started mopping the floor near the observation windows. The dragons were definitely watching him now, all 6 of them pressed against the glass closest to where he worked. Their golden eyes followed his movements as he cleaned, but they didn't seem aggressive at all. "Maybe they're just scared," Tom said quietly, not really meaning for anyone to hear him. Dr. Wells stopped talking and turned to look at him. "Excuse me?" Tom felt his face turn red. He wasn't supposed to interrupt the scientists during their work. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. I was just thinking that maybe they're more scared than angry. When my daughter gets scared at the hospital, she acts tough and tries to bite the doctors too." The 3 researchers stared at him for a moment. Behind them, the dragons continued watching Tom through the glass, their behavior completely different from how they acted around everyone else. "That's an interesting observation," Dr. Wells said slowly. "What makes you think they're scared?" Tom shrugged and continued mopping. "Look at how they're huddled together. And see how the little one keeps looking around like it's searching for something? My Katie does the same thing when she's in a new place and doesn't understand what's happening." Tom Bradley dropped into his old cleaning chair with a heavy sigh that seemed to come from deep in his bones. The chair had seen better days, just like him. The padding was worn thin from years of use, and one of the wheels wobbled when he moved it. But it was his chair, and after 16 hours of work, it felt like the most comfortable place in the universe. He unscrewed the cap of his battered metal thermos and poured himself a cup of coffee that had gone lukewarm hours ago. The smell was still comforting though, reminding him of early morning breakfasts with Katie before her treatment started. Tom reached behind his back and tried to work out a knot in his muscles that had been bothering him all week. His body was telling him he was getting too old for this kind of physical work, but his bank account said he had at least 10 more years before he could even think about retirement. The scientists had finally left the lab about an hour ago, frustrated and exhausted from another day of failed experiments. The dragons had attacked 2 more researchers who tried to get close enough to take blood samples. Dr. Wells had thrown her clipboard across the room before storming out, muttering something about impossible creatures and wasted time. Now the lab was quiet except for the soft humming of the life support systems and the occasional chirping sounds the dragons made when they talked to each other. Tom sipped his coffee and watched them through the glass wall of their containment unit. They were beautiful creatures, he had to admit. Even more amazing up close than in the videos that had been sent to research stations across the galaxy. The smallest dragon, the one that had hatched first, was sitting apart from its siblings. While the others huddled together in their usual corner, this one was right up against the glass, staring directly at Tom. Its golden eyes were incredibly expressive, almost human-like in the way they seemed to be thinking and processing information. Tom had always been good with animals. Back on Earth, before Katie got sick and everything changed, he used to volunteer at the local animal shelter on weekends. Scared dogs, abandoned cats, injured birds brought in by well-meaning families. They all seemed to calm down around him in ways that surprised even the veterinarians who worked there. "What are you looking at, little guy?" Tom asked softly, raising his thermos in a small greeting. The dragon tilted its head to one side, then the other, like it was trying to understand something. Its behavior was completely different from what Tom had witnessed earlier. When the scientists were around, all 6 dragons would pace back and forth, their scales seeming to darken with anger. They would bare their teeth and make threatening sounds whenever anyone got close to their enclosure. But now, with just Tom in the room, the smallest dragon looked curious rather than hostile. It pressed one small paw against the glass and made a soft trilling sound that was nothing like the aggressive roars Tom had heard before. "You're just scared, aren't you?" Tom said, setting his thermos down on the small table next to his chair. "This place is scary when you don't understand what's happening. I bet you miss your family." As if it understood his words, the dragon made another soft sound and moved even closer to the glass. The other 5 dragons had noticed their siblings' behavior and were starting to approach as well, though they stayed more cautious. Dr. Wells had mentioned earlier that the containment unit had a service door that maintenance staff could use for cleaning and equipment repairs. It was supposed to be locked at all times when the dragons were inside, but Tom could see that someone had forgotten to engage the electronic lock after the last failed feeding attempt. Without really thinking about it, Tom stood up from his chair and walked over to the service panel. His hand hesitated over the door controls. Everyone on the station had been warned about how dangerous these creatures were. The medical bay was still treating people who had been bitten during routine procedures. But looking at the dragons now, Tom saw something that the scientists seemed to be missing. These weren't monsters or mindless predators. They were frightened babies who had been taken from everything they knew and placed in a sterile, unfamiliar environment surrounded by strangers. "This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done," Tom muttered to himself as he pressed the door release. The containment unit door slid open with a soft hiss. All 6 dragons immediately moved to the opening, but they didn't rush out aggressively like Tom had expected. Instead, they gathered at the threshold and watched him carefully, as if they were asking permission to come closer. The smallest dragon took the first tentative step into the main lab area. It moved slowly, keeping its golden eyes locked on Tom's face. When Tom didn't move or make any threatening gestures, the little creature took another step, then another. Tom sat back down in his chair and remained perfectly still. The dragon approached him like a cautious house cat, stopping every few steps to sniff the air around him. Tom realized the creature was learning about him through scent, picking up information that humans couldn't detect. What the dragon smelled was the honest sweat of hard physical work, the lingering scent of machine oil from the engine room, and something else. Something that spoke of sleepless nights spent worrying about someone else, of sacrifices made without complaint, of love that asked for nothing in return. When the dragon finally reached Tom's chair, it pressed its small head against his leg with a sound that was unmistakably a purr. The contact sent a warm feeling through Tom's chest that he hadn't experienced since Katie was small enough to fall asleep in his arms. One by one, the other 5 dragons followed their siblings' lead, approaching Tom with the same careful curiosity. Soon all 6 creatures were gathered around his chair, purring softly as they pressed against his legs and arms like enormous, scaly cats seeking comfort. From somewhere behind him, Tom heard a sharp intake of breath. Dr. Wells was standing in the lab doorway, her face pressed against the observation window, watching in complete amazement as the creatures who had terrorized her research team became as gentle as pets in the presence of a tired janitor. News of Tom's breakthrough with the dragon hatchlings spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within 72 hours, the Aurora Dawn research station was receiving communication requests from every major scientific organization in known space. Ships began arriving from star systems hundreds of light years away, all carrying experts who claimed they could solve the mystery of why these ancient creatures only responded peacefully to one human janitor. The first to arrive was a delegation from the Altarian Council, a race of tall, blue-skinned beings known throughout the galaxy for their incredible ability to communicate with animal species. Their lead specialist, Dr. Zenthare, had successfully tamed the savage crystal wolves of Proxima 7 and had written the standard textbook on interspecies behavioral psychology that was used in universities across 3 spiral arms. Dr. Zenthare entered the dragon containment area with complete confidence, carrying advanced scanning equipment that could read the emotional states of creatures from dozens of different worlds. The moment she stepped into the room, all 6 dragon hatchlings immediately moved to the far corner of their enclosure. Their scales darkened to an almost black color, and they began making the same aggressive sounds that had terrified the human research team for weeks. Fascinating, Dr. Zenthare muttered, adjusting her equipment. Their fear response is much stronger than I anticipated. But I have techniques that have never failed before. She activated a device that projected calming pheromones into the air, chemicals that were known to relax aggressive animals on over 50 different worlds. The dragon's response was immediate and violent. The largest hatchling launched itself at the reinforced glass wall with such force that cracks appeared in the supposedly unbreakable material. 2 hours later, Dr. Zenthare left the station, her equipment damaged and her confidence badly shaken. I have studied thousands of species across the galaxy, she told Dr. Wells before boarding her ship. I have never encountered creatures that rejected every form of peaceful contact. These beings are unlike anything in my experience. Next came a team from the Vegan Federation, a collective of highly evolved beings who had developed telepathic abilities over millions of years of evolution. Their approach was completely different from the Altarians. Instead of using technology, they attempted to make direct mind-to-mind contact with the dragons. The lead telepath, a being who called himself Harmony of Thoughts, sat in meditation position outside the dragon enclosure for 6 straight hours. He projected feelings of peace, safety, and friendship directly into the minds of the hatchlings. The dragons responded by becoming so agitated that the station's medical team had to sedate them to prevent them from injuring themselves trying to break out of their containment. Their minds are closed to us, Harmony of Thoughts reported sadly. It is as if they have built walls around their thoughts that our abilities cannot penetrate. Perhaps their species evolved specifically to resist telepathic contact. Over the following days, more experts arrived. The silicon-based life forms from the crystalline nebula tried communicating through harmonic vibrations. A delegation of energy beings attempted to connect with the dragons on a pure consciousness level. Each group brought advanced techniques and technologies that had worked successfully with countless other species. Every single attempt ended the same way. The dragons would become hostile and aggressive the moment any non-human entered their presence. They seemed to have an instinctive hatred for every alien species that tried to approach them. But then something interesting happened. Janet Parker, one of the station's medical nurses, heard about the situation and asked if she could visit the dragons during her lunch break. Janet had spent 15 years taking care of sick children in the station's family medical unit. She had gentle hands and a soft voice that could calm even the most frightened patients. The moment Janet walked into the dragon containment area, the hatchlings' behavior changed completely. Instead of retreating to their corner or showing aggression, they moved toward her with obvious curiosity. The smallest dragon, the one that had first approached Tom, walked right up to the glass wall and pressed its head against the barrier, purring softly. "Well, that's unexpected," Dr. Wells said, watching from the observation room. An hour later, Bobby Johnson, one of the elementary school teachers from the station's education center, stopped by to see what all the excitement was about. Bobby taught the children of families stationed on Aurora Dawn, and he had a reputation for being able to handle even the most difficult students with patience and understanding. The dragons practically went crazy with excitement when Bobby entered the room. They pressed against the glass walls, making happy chirping sounds and flapping their small wings in what looked like pure joy. When Bobby was allowed into the containment unit, 3 of the hatchlings immediately climbed into his lap, purring like enormous cats. Dr. Wells started making notes frantically as she watched. A pattern was beginning to emerge, but it wasn't what anyone had expected. Over the next few days, more members of the station's human crew visited the dragons. Chief Engineer Rachel Davis, who took care of the station's complex machinery with the same dedication that a parent shows their children, was greeted warmly by the hatchlings. Security Officer Paul Mitchell, known throughout the station for helping new crew members settle in and feel welcome, had dragons climbing all over him within minutes. But when Dr. Peterson, the station's ambitious head researcher, tried to enter the containment area, the dragons immediately became hostile. When Commander Hayes, the strict military officer who ran station security with an iron fist, approached the enclosure, the hatchlings retreated to their corner and refused to come out. It's not just humans, Dr. Wells realized, watching maintenance worker Dave Collins gently stroke a purring hatchling while the creature practically melted under his touch. It's a specific type of human. The dragons are somehow able to sense something that we can't measure with our instruments. Dave Collins had worked on space stations for 20 years, fixing broken equipment and keeping life support systems running while everyone else slept safely in their beds. He was the kind of person who stayed late to help a colleague finish a difficult repair, who remembered everyone's birthday, who never complained even when he had to work double shifts. The dragons seemed to recognize something in Dave that they also saw in Tom, Janet, Bobby, Rachel, and Paul. Something that made them feel safe and loved for the first time since they had hatched in this strange, sterile environment so far from whatever home they had lost long ago. 6 months had passed since Tom Bradley first sat down in his old cleaning chair and changed everything anyone thought they knew about the dragon hatchlings. The Aurora Dawn research station had been completely transformed. What used to be a small scientific outpost studying nebula formations was now the most famous dragon sanctuary in 3 sectors of space. Ships arrived daily from across the galaxy, bringing visitors who wanted to see the miracle for themselves. The original cramped laboratory had been expanded into a massive habitat that took up nearly half the station. Crystal formations and heated rocks created an environment that felt more like home to the dragons, who had grown considerably over the past months. Tom still couldn't believe how much his life had changed. The station administrators had offered him the position of Director of Dragon Care, with a salary that was 10 times what he'd been making as a janitor. More importantly, Katie's medical bills were completely covered by the research foundation that now funded their work. His daughter was healthy and happy, and she video called him every day to hear stories about the dragons. "Dad, did the baby dragons learn any new tricks today?" Katie would ask from her hospital bed back on Earth, her eyes bright with excitement. Tom loved telling her about how the hatchlings had started flying short distances around their habitat, or how they had figured out how to open the food dispensers by working together. The dragons themselves were thriving in ways that amazed everyone who studied them. They had grown to about the size of medium dogs, their scales now showing hints of deep purple and gold among the original black. Their intelligence was clearly far beyond what anyone had first realized. They could solve complex puzzles, communicate with each other using a sophisticated system of chirps and body language, and they had even learned to recognize their favorite humans by sight. But the most incredible discovery had come from months of careful research led by Dr. Wells and her expanded team of scientists. Using advanced brain scanning equipment and electromagnetic sensors, they had figured out exactly why the dragons responded to certain humans and not others. "It's not magic or telepathy," Dr. Wells explained to the latest group of researchers visiting from the Galactic Science Council. "It's actually a measurable biological phenomenon. The dragons can sense the electromagnetic patterns produced by human brain activity, particularly the patterns associated with what we call selfless compassion. The research had shown that when humans engaged in caring behavior without expecting anything in return, their brains produced a unique combination of neural activity. Teachers helping struggling students, nurses comforting scared patients, parents staying up all night with sick children, maintenance workers taking extra time to fix something properly even when no one was watching. All of these activities created the same distinctive electromagnetic signature that the dragons could detect. Think of it like a fingerprint that only shows up when someone is genuinely caring for others, Tom explained to a group of young researchers who had come to study the dragons. These creatures can literally sense kindness and selflessness. It's like they have a built-in detector for people who put others before themselves. The implications were staggering. Archaeological teams had discovered more information about the dragon's original species in ancient ruins across the galaxy. They had once been companion animals to a highly advanced civilization that had disappeared millions of years ago. That civilization had apparently been built around principles of mutual care and cooperation, and they had formed bonds with the dragons based on their ability to recognize genuine compassion. "They are not just responding to us," Tom told the researchers, watching as a group of children from the station's family quarters played with young dragons in the main habitat area. "They are recognizing something they lost long ago when their original companions vanished. They are looking for the same kind of people who cared for them millions of years ago." The children laughed with delight as baby dragons no bigger than house cats climbed over them, purring and making happy chirping sounds. 8-year-old Jenny Collins, whose father Dave worked in maintenance, had a special bond with the smallest dragon. The creature would curl up in her lap for hours while she read stories aloud. "It's amazing how they know," Jenny's mother, Linda Collins, said to Tom as they watched from the observation area. "Jenny has always been the kind of child who brings home injured birds and tries to help anyone who looks sad." The dragons sensed that about her immediately. The most remarkable thing was how the dragons were changing the people around them. Crew members who had never paid much attention to others were starting to volunteer for community projects. Scientists who had been focused only on their research were taking time to mentor younger colleagues. The presence of creatures who could literally sense kindness was inspiring everyone to be more caring and compassionate. Visitors came from across the galaxy, not just to see the dragons, but to learn from them. Military leaders wanted to understand how empathy could be measured and encouraged in their troops. Diplomats were interested in how the dragons' abilities could help identify trustworthy negotiators. Educators wondered if the dragons could help them find the most effective teachers and counselors. But for Tom, the most important lesson was much simpler. As he watched the dragons play happily with the children, their scales shimmering in the artificial sunlight of their habitat, he realized that the galaxy had learned something invaluable. In a universe full of advanced technology and sophisticated alien civilizations, sometimes the most important qualities were the simplest ones. The dragons had survived for millions of years, waiting for someone who would care for them without expecting anything in return. They had found that quality in a tired janitor who worked double shifts to pay his daughter's medical bills, and in all the other humans who quietly made life better for everyone around them.